Well, Chelsea, Gary, you guys are brother and sister.
Yes.
We are.
Man,
We
that
are.
is amazing. And at one point, you guys were brother and sister spiritually
Yeah.
in the family of Christ.
Yeah.
But something interesting happened, which was you started asking very good and necessary questions, Gary, and those questions started to put doubts to the foundation of your belief. And long story short, today you don't believe in God.
Correct.
Perfect. And you would say about yourself, you're an atheist, you are agnostic. How would you say that about yourself?
Well, on most days, your typical garden variety atheist, which is just I'm unconvinced.
Okay.
That kind of thing. But on some days, depending on what's going on, I'm more border on anti-theism. In other words, when I see behaviors taking place that I really don't agree with,
Yes.
that's when that part of me comes out. That's like, I am opposed to what's going on here. I'm not just on the fence or on the sideline. Just I don't know. I'm just unconvinced. No, that type of stuff makes me actively opposed to what's going on.
Okay.
Now, if everybody was just loving people, like what I've seen from Chelsea, from you, honestly, I wouldn't have that much to oppose. On the behavioral front.
In the intellectual, maybe.
On
you
the
would.
intellectual, somewhat, because one of the other
Belief stuff.
One of the things that drives the position that I'm at right now is this: I want to believe as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And because day to day, I do granite countertops, so I'm literally carving something in stone, right? And so before I can say you need a hole cut, well, before I can determine it needs to be cut here or there or there, I have to know why it is that I'm cutting it here and not here, why I need it to be this shape and not that shape. I have to know that I know so many things about it, because once I cut it, it's permanent. And so I operate day to day. Just how do I know that? How do I know this? How do I know this is the right house I'm at? How do I know this is the right color that I'm supposed to cut for this job? How do I know this is the right location to cut this sink or this cooktop or that? Yeah. How do I know what I know? And that's a major driving force.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll ask you more questions about your journey.
Okay.
In a minute. Well, Chelsea,
Yeah.
how are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
Oh yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you guys for having me.
So Chelsea, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and also your journey as a follower of Jesus? Is that right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so I'm Gary's sister, older sister, by a couple of years. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, which I love. So just a couple hours down the road.
Nice.
And like Gary said, we routinely kind of swim in deep waters way before even he started questioning. That's just been kind of the normal rhythm of our adult relationship, which is great. So me as a Christian, it's interesting. I hear the term deconstruction from a lot of people, whether they land in the atheist place or whatever. There's a lot of deconstruction happening now. And I went through a period of deconstruction myself, raised in what I would characterize as a religious home.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I think if you ever ask my parents, they would say a Christian home, but my opinion is that we grew up in a religious home.
Oh.
And so where we did the do's and you don't do the don'ts and that sort of thing. And so I married my husband when I was 18 years old, moved out of my parents' house into my house with my husband. And then about 3 years later, I started to deconstruct myself. And there was one day where I was just thinking, I was sitting and I was praying and reading my Bible, and I was thinking about, like, why is this so hard? Why am I... The way that I explain it to people is I was cheating at Bible study. Like, I'm sure you've seen those different Bible studies where I was in this specific Bible study, and the writer of the study would ask a question, and then you would answer. There was blank lines for you to answer, and then below that there was an explanation of what kind of context of the answer, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, I would have to skip the blank lines and read ahead to the answer. So I literally felt like, why am I having to cheat at Bible study? Why is this not connecting with me?
Interesting.
And I felt, and I was really earnestly like praying and saying like, Lord, why is this so hard? Why am I not getting it? What everybody else seems to be getting out of Scripture. And in that moment, like I can tell you kind of the place I was sitting and, you know, where I was at the time. And in that moment, I felt kind of impressed on my mind the thought where the Lord said, you know all about me, but you don't know me. And that was a pivot point in kind of what I would say is my first steps into Christianity. And like, I did know a lot of biblical things. I knew all the do's. I could talk my way out of any religious conversation in terms of what the Bible says about X, Y, or Z, because I knew that. And then, so from that moment, I was like, okay, teach me about you, because I know all about you, but I don't know you, so teach me that. And so that began my journey of, you know, that was 21, I'm now 52, so 30 years ago of like, okay, what does that even look like? How does that reconcile with my life? Well, so then I began to deconstruct, okay, how much of what I learned in that religious home was true and right and good, and how much wasn't? So over the next couple of years, as I went through that process, I realized about 70 to 80% was true and foundational and biblical and, you know, those sorts of things. But about 20 or 30% of it was more religion stacked on top, whether it was tradition or doctrine or opinion or denominational or whatever it was not. And so I had to kind of deconstruct and untangle the religion from who God is. And so now, you know, 3 decades later, when I hear people start to deconstruct, or when I hear people start to have problems with Christianity, it's easier for me to see sometimes your problem is actually not necessarily with Christianity. Maybe it is, but your problem is definitely with some Christians and some religious people, and what you see behaviorally.
Yeah.
You know, and so I get it, but that's my journey as a Christian of just really kind of that untangling of religion itself apart from who God is.
That is so interesting.
Do you see why
Gary, you guys, your family. And by the way, Patricia is there. Patricia is awesome. I wish I was a part of your family.
Well, you kind of are.
Okay.
We spend a lot of time
So,
together.
Gary, here are the questions that I hope they're okay, because some of the things that Chelsea, your sister, just said, you didn't know, right? Because I've heard you react. Oh, wow. So how does all of that make you feel in this stage of your life, and after asking all these questions, and when you are today, when you hear your sister talking about that? And I'm going to ask her questions about you in this manner. Okay.
So the first thing that comes to mind is just, man, she's so awesome in how she thinks about all these different things, and then how the typical person would react. She's able to step back and say, okay, is that a justifiable reaction? And she oftentimes chooses a nuanced path there that the average person doesn't go down. And so I just really appreciate that about her. I remember one time she told me, this was in a business context, and companies were merging and so on and so on. She says, you know, if the question ever comes up, hey, why do we do this thing this way? Why do we do that way? The answer should never be, because that's the way we've always done it. That's not good enough. We need to explore that now. And you know. So when I hear you describe your journey, I'm impressed by the questions that you've asked, and then how you pulled apart different parts of it and said, this is stuff that was added on. This is the core, you know. We've had similar paths. We just went in different.
Landed at different places.
We landed at different places.
Yeah.
So, Chelsea, when you heard a little bit there, Gary talking about his journey, we'll ask him more questions. How do you feel about this? You have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that like one of the things that he says that he wants to believe as much that's true and not believe what's false.
Yes.
I think we can agree on that. You know, it's how we define where we get to is what's true. So we agree on that. The one place that we probably disagree is that I don't necessarily. I'm not the source of truth. I'm not necessarily the judge of what's true. Maybe something is true, and I don't understand it yet. So I have to allow myself the ability to still remain curious and be comfortable with the fact that it may still be true. There are lots of things about physics that are true that I don't understand, you know, or whatever. So there are things that are true oftentimes. And like even in my own journey, there are things that are true. And 20 years ago, I didn't understand them. 10 years ago, I didn't understand them. Maybe only last year I came to understand. Maybe only yesterday.
Even though you knew it was true all along.
Even though I believed it was true, it may take time for me to actually understand the truth of it. And so I think there's a little bit more. That's where the one part where we might have to disagree.
I see.
You know, because there's a difference in someone saying I don't believe it until I know it's true versus, or until I can believe it. It can be proven to me that it's true versus I believe it's true. I may not understand exactly how yet, or I may not understand the fullness of it yet, but I believe that I will in time.
I see.
And so there's a little bit of a, you know, we probably disagree if we were to push that to its logical end.
So
100%.
So I have a question for both of you.
Yeah.
And I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this. I know this through Gary, that you guys try to have one conversation about all of this. I think it happened over the phone.
Well, first, you're talking about the couple that went bad.
Yes. So the question is just to give some background to this and how valuable it is that you guys are sitting here today with those beautiful smiles. That this is not easy. This is not see, someone is watching this and say, oh, I need to have this conversation too. It doesn't have to be about Christianity. It could be about anything, like absolutely anything.
Yeah.
But I think this is helpful because people can see.
Yeah.
You know, there's a process to these things.
I can probably introduce this one.
Yeah,
pretty
what
well.
happened there?
So I began asking a lot of questions, watching a bunch of different debates, learning a lot about the age of the earth and how we know what we know, and this kind of stuff, and came to this conclusion of I think people have made all this up, you know, and I think we've done it throughout history. That was kind of the point at which I said I'm no longer a believer, and at that point, I was very vocal. Not that I'm not still very vocal, but I became vocal about this particular thing. And it was like I wanted to tell everybody. You know? I felt as though I had been duped, and I felt like other people had been tricked, or you know, and so it kind of became my thing to like, hey, did you know that people have been making this stuff up for a long time, and we don't know what we've, you know. And so I approached Chelsea and I said, hey, I got some things I want to talk to you about. She's like, okay. And I said, I just came out of the gate and somebody like, all this is made up. There's no evidence for any of this. And she says, well, you know.
So wait a second.
Let's not go there.
Wait a second, Gary. So when you said that to Chelsea, you guys hadn't talked about your deconversion before. It was just like that.
Very
okay.
We know each other well enough.
Okay,
we're brother and
okay.
sister. We know each other our whole lives. So, you know, and we've spent hours and hours, days, you know, together, camping trips.
Okay, perfect.
Everything. So we're very familiar. So it's not like we needed to warm up to get into it.
Oh, definitely. Good. Yeah.
We stay there, you know.
Yeah.
And so, just out of the blue, like at the end of I think we went canoeing or kayaking or
Whitewater rafting.
Whitewater rafting.
Yeah, we did.
So,
we're with a group of people. He and I were in a conversation with the two of us, but on the trip there was like 6 other people.
Yeah, and at the end of the trip, right before we leave, I'm like, hey, real quick before we leave. I know we've already done the whitewater rafting. We'd already
been ziplining that day too.
Yeah, we've had this adventurous day, right? So look, now that you're tired, and before you get in your car, right? I just want to let you know, everything we've believed our whole lives has been totally made up.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I'm out, And so she was just, where does this come
That
from?
oh wow, that's so patient. Oh wow was not my response. I'll just say that.
So I noticed. So I came into the conversation very abruptly, somewhat aggressively, and I noticed her getting a little upset. I noticed a little tear in her eye, and I think she kind of exited the conversation and said, "Look, I've got a group of people here. Go ahead. If you've got to head back, go ahead, and we'll talk about this later." Okay. So we ended out, and it was probably a 5-minute conversation, if that. But it was, it was like somebody throwing a huge rock into a still pool of water and just upset everything. So about a couple of days later, we picked up the conversation again, and by that point, she had had a little bit of time to process where, okay, my brother's at this state, and I had a chance to load all of my weapons, and we had the conversation, and I just came out firing. Let me tell you point number one, point number two, and any challenge, and in listening to a lot of these debates, whether it's Hitchens or Harris or Dawkins or anybody, you hear a lot of, the standards rebuttals. And so when Chelsea would come with certain rebuttal, I reached back in the file and I pulled out, answer number 12, and I fired it, and it was very aggressive. It was very, and it did a lot of damage to the relationship for a short period of time. We normally talk once a week, something like that. And we didn't talk for a couple of months. It seemed like. And finally I called her and I said, "Hey, what's up? We haven't talked in a couple of months." I was very excited about these conversations, And she said, "Well, I felt very attacked. I felt very, you were very aggressive. I felt very attacked and somewhat disrespected. These things are very personal to me, and you came in so hard, and so, that was the essence of it."
Okay.
And so I said, "Hey," my response was, "Okay, we never have to talk about it again. We never have to have the conversations again at all. I value you much more than these conversations. So, if that needs to be the case, absolutely, I'm fine with that. I value you. I love you. We never have to talk about it again." And for a short period of time, we kind of rested right there. Like, fine, let's don't. And then in some of my other conversations with you and Conversation Coalition and other things, I was getting ready for one of these debates, conversations, And so I called Chelsea and I said, "I want to get your opinion on something." I was preparing for my talk with Tim. And the topic of that was, can someone be good without God? And so I called Chelsea and I said, "Hey, I want to get your opinion on something. And I know we haven't done well in these conversations in the past, but I want to ask you a question. I want to get your response, and I don't want to respond. I don't want to give you my opinion, nothing. This is a total, you can just download. That's it." She said, "Okay." So I asked her the question. She spoke for 10, 15 minutes, gave me her full, answer inside and out in answer to that question. And she got done, and I said, "Okay, thanks. See you. I'll call you next week." She's like, "Okay." Well, then she circled back around, 4 or 5 days later and said, "Hey, we had this phone call. You asked me this question. I gave you my answer, but you didn't give me anything back, as you said. I'd like to now reverse that, and I'd like to know your answer to that same question." That was really the opening door.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, Chelsea, how did you experience all of that when you had the conversation after the kayaking? Was it? No.
Yeah, it was whitewater rafting.
So
yeah.
there, and then the conversation over the phone. How was that journey for you?
Yeah, so I think it's important to know, kind of, and I think this is important for a lot of people to understand, that you can have a conversation between two people, whether they're siblings or whatever. But whenever that conversation happens, each of those people has other things in their life that are happening at the same time that may inform, whatever. So yeah, so 100% agree. Gary was very aggressive, very excited, all the things that he just said was exactly true. But the other component is I have a 30-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. And so as happens, usually around college age, kids kind of deconstruct or whatever. So my husband and I raised our kids, in a Christian home, and somewhat different from the one that we grew up in. In retrospect, probably in some ways the same. So both of my kids in different ways were also in the process of deconstructing. So now, and then my son was dating a girl, and that was a difficult thing, and they ended up getting married, and so I had that stress of a difficult relationship.
Yeah.
My daughter's just going off the rails a little bit. And then here comes my brother. and so the look on my face was somewhat of like, oh, hold on, like I'm not ready for this. But then the other part of it was, look, what in my life is going off the rails. You cannot go off the rails too.
Oh.
Like I don't have anywhere to put this conversation right now. And so it was more of not only was it aggressive, it was also just ill-timed. In relationship to the other things that were going on. So which he is not responsible for, but just that contributed to, I may or may not have responded any better to it, to be quite honest, but that was also a contributing factor. And so some part of the other conversation that we had later was, I felt attacked. I felt you were very aggressive. However, I'm actually depleted anyway because of these other components. And so you came at me in a time where I was probably not 100% able to do that. So that was it. And then I think over time, as he's gone on his journey, I've come to realize that his journey is his, my journey is mine. I have a relationship with Jesus. And the way that I've explained it to Gary is that it would be like if he saw my husband out to dinner with a woman, and he came to me and said, "Hey, I think my husband's name is Bubba. I think Bubba's having an affair," and I would be like, "I know him, and that's not his character. So I'm gonna I hear you. I'm gonna go have a conversation because something's wrong." And so when I hear accusations and God, is or isn't real, did or didn't do, whatever. Part of the way that the filter through which I receive that is like, you're talking about somebody that I have a relationship with, that I know.
Oh gosh. I just never heard this put this way.
Right.
Oh man.
And so I'm like,
I'm being biased. Sorry, man.
That's okay.
Sorry. I've never heard it put this way.
Right.
Wow.
So I'm like, and he and I have had this conversation, but it's almost like you're attacking someone that I know, and so you can say what you want, you can struggle with what you want, but I know this person, and it doesn't threaten my relation. Your struggle does not threaten my relationship with Jesus, and I don't feel responsible for your relationship with or without, or belief in or without Jesus. You and I can be in relationship, and you can ask these questions, and I can tell you, I don't believe that. And we had this conversation just the other day of like, I hear what you're saying. I don't believe that. And I'm okay to say that. And there should be freedom in these conversations to say, I don't believe that, and here's why. But as a Christian, I think a lot of times Christians get anxious because they feel threatened. And maybe that's good, because especially if they've just been religious, and maybe they were like me and they know a lot about God, but maybe they don't really know God. That's a different anxiety than, or maybe I do know God and I don't know a lot about him because I've invested in the do's and the don'ts, and I haven't invested in the relationship. That's different too. So I think as his journey has progressed, my journey in interacting with him has also progressed to say, wait a minute, this is his journey, and if he can't ask me some of these questions as somebody important in his life who loves him and who is I would say a mature believer in Jesus, who's walked with Jesus for a long time, who can he ask? If I shut that down, then what am I doing? And so, there's a little bit of a responsibility there too.
Well, I really appreciate that. I don't know if you've ever told me that, but I really appreciate it.
What's that about Bubba? About like the analogy there? Or
No,
what do you mean?
if he can't ask me, who can he? So
I mean, I don't want to debate you. It's like, I don't want to feel like we're debating. Just to be clear.
Oh, I know you don't want to debate me. We know that.
Well, you know something that happens with people like you and me that like the intellectual side of things. We sometimes, you know what? Not you, me. I'm going to talk about myself. Sometimes I expect that they're going to like to approach topics like that, and man,
Right.
there are many atheists, for example, that they don't like that type of conversation either. Like being challenged. They're just, for some reason or another, they just don't believe. But they're not comfortable with the clashing of ideas. So there's something specific about, Hitchens and this, all these things. Like you have to be, I would say, made, or I don't know how to say it, but you need to like those things. I understand. By the way, when I became a Christian, I lost 2 friends from Spain because I was going at them the way.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I mean,
it's like all of a sudden you go, now I see.
yeah,
and
you wanted to tell everybody.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
we had a friend like that here locally.
Yeah.
That when he became a believer, next thing you know, every time he saw you, he wanted to tell you about it. He wanted to, hey man, you need to get the demons out of you, and you need to, all this stuff. And it got to be a topic of conversation among the rest of the friend group. Like, hey man, when he came over and saw you, was he talking like this and this and this? Oh yeah, man. Every time he comes over, it's this and this and this.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, everybody's talking about that. And yeah, it can definitely affect friendships.
It affected me.
Yeah.
I lost two friends because of it. So I guess this is just the mistakes that we need to make in life to know, man.
Well, and not everybody likes to be challenged.
Oh, yeah.
If there's something that I believe that is wrong, I want to know why people think that it's wrong, and I'll analyze that for a little bit, because again, I don't want to believe false things.
Yes.
So if somebody says, Gary, I think you might be believing something that
Yeah.
you shouldn't. Oh, now I'm really investigating that thing.
Yeah.
Very hard.
So let me ask you guys a question. Let's see if this is a good question or not. But you guys know each other. You guys know each other's personalities. You, Chelsea, because of knowing Gary and his personality and the way he interacts with others and the world around him, was this journey expected according to everything that you knew about him? And I would like to ask you the same question about Chelsea. Because just to give you an example, my brother Jose, whom I love, like the way you guys love each other, he's just a skeptic by nature, like so, but it has been that all his life. So it's almost like even before he started asking big questions, let's call them like day by day questions, he has always been skeptic. So for me, there's something, personality aspects, I don't know how to put it, the way to think about it makes me expect that he is where he is today. There's even doubting things that I would say are true, but he still doubts them because he has found identity in being skeptical. So I just wanted to ask you about that. What would you say about that? I'll start with you, Chelsea.
Was it surprising? To an extent, it was, but not because of what you might think. I think I was surprised that he was questioning and wrestling with some of the bigger, like, conceptual questions of just life and purpose and meaning and that kind of thing. Because he didn't, even though he was a deep thinker and that kind of thing, the part of him that would really kind of think about the big life stuff, I was always that that one. I was always the one that kind of thought about the metaphysical aspects of whatever. So that was surprising.
So it was almost like I had this firm foundation, but I would question other things and be rebellious in these other ways. And then all of a sudden, now I'm going, okay.
Well, and I don't know necessarily. I mean, I think I would question whether did we really have a firm foundation,
Sure.
to be fair. I don't know that we necessarily did. But I think, you were just more of, I'm trying to think of a right way to explain it. Not that you had no depth to you. That's not what I mean. But like,
it's just that my deeper parts were solid, and I was just mischievous on the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I will say,
A little rebellious, but not deeply rebellious.
Well, and I will say that, of course, he had some wild years. You probably heard about a lot of that. But as a man. Was I supposed to say that?
No. It's just you're saying it. I'm just remembering one story that he told me. And the way he told, by the way, your brother telling stories, there's no one like him.
It's amazing. And
He's this, and you're in this story. You believe that you're there with him. What the heck? I'm not there.
And then do you know anyone that laughs like him?
No.
Does he not have the very best laugh?
No, he's. I'm just so glad that I'm his friend. So.
But he had his crazy years. But then, like, I would say, I don't know, the past 25 years or whatever, the man that I have grown to love in him is an incredible man. Like, he is a man of his word. He has an incredible work ethic. He's charismatic. He cares about people. So I love the man that he is. So I know that there is like solid rock, in his character. And so I know that about him, but yet he didn't seem to ponder, he's not I've never known him to be a journaler or a heavy thinker. Like, he just didn't worry about all that. So when these questions started to come up, I was like, where is this coming from? Like, that's the other thing that was a little bit shocking. So I would say that it was surprising. I think because I'm such a deep thinker and a questioner and a processor or whatever, it would have been less surprising for me to
be the one asking those questions.
Yes.
Wow.
I would have thought that I would have been the one.
It's interesting she's saying this because this is the way I know you. So it's hard for me to think about you not being a person being so inquisitive about reality around you. That is amazing.
Well,
although you were like that with work, you're very curious.
Yeah, I've just been preoccupied most of my life with just other things.
Whether
it was woodworking or granite or anything else, automotive stuff. I would think really deeply and really get to know just other things, and then somehow I started questioning religion, and once I became enamored by how did we get here? How do we?
So, same question for you about Chelsea.
Has it been surprising, her journey?
Yeah.
Not at all, really. Chelsea always stood out, even when we were young. Chelsea was a cheerleader, and all through elementary and high school and into college and all that. But she didn't handle herself like the other people on her squad. She was just different. When she was very young and married, and her husband left the church, and not to leave the religion, not to leave her relationship with Jesus, none of those things. We're just not going to go into this building. Instead, we're going to go into this building a few blocks down the road, and the reaction of everybody at our original church home, and then her and her husband saying, it's unusual that y'all all feel that way, but we're still going to go do our thing. And she's always charted her own path and been solid about, this is the direction I'm going, and people may or may not understand it, but this is how I'm going to go. So, no, I haven't been surprised at her path or her growth and depth and seeking something deeper than just going through the religious motions. That's not surprising at all. So.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Gary. In your process of doubting or deconstructing, in whatever way you describe it, I know it's difficult because if you were to ask me, Pedro, what was the moment like you, right? You were an atheist and now you. So, do you remember or know if there was a specific time, specific moment, specific idea, specific answer? Maybe something happened in your life that made you start questioning everything about Christianity. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
There's a couple of there's two specifically that come to mind.
Okay.
One in which actually involves Chelsea.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
It's all your fault.
Okay.
It's all your fault.
Let's dig in.
Okay.
She and her husband were building a house, and asked me to do the granite tops, and I said, yeah, absolutely. So they came to town. I started showing them around the slabs, and we had this amazing slab in the warehouse, and it was all full of fossils. And I said, hey, while you're here, I know we're not going to put this in your house, but while you're here, I want to show you this slab, all these fossils in it.
By the way, I wish we'd have had that slab. I wish we had done it. Because now, as a creative, I think it's so cool.
Oh, man, it's amazing, you know. So I was showing her this slab, and I said, yeah, so what happened is millions of years ago, these guys were swimming in this thing, and they got stuck, and now they're encapsulated in this slab, and, you know. But, yeah, all that happened millions of years ago. Isn't that amazing? And I remember Chelsea looking at me, and she goes, millions? Really? And I looked at her, and I went, yeah, millions. Like, why would you not think that that's... But we were both raised young earth creationists. But I've been into rocks for 2 decades, you know, at this point. And so I really get into how they were formed. You know, is this an igneous rock or a metamorphic or sedimentary, you know? So I'm aware of how they're formed and how long it takes and some of the processes and what rocks can tell us about what was going on in that area at that time. And, you know, and so that was a really key thing, and it always stuck with me. And honestly, it's still fascinating to me today that some people that you and I know and love, you know, still consider the earth to be young. And so that was one thing that stuck with me. One of the other things was I heard somebody on the news or somewhere. You hear the phrase all the time, got to stand with Israel. I mean, if nothing else, got to back Israel. And it just stood out to me as a peculiar statement. You know, you don't hear that much about other countries. When's the last time you heard somebody say, got to stand with Guatemala? Whatever you do, got to back up Italy. Man, don't let Italy just be out there just floundering. Got to stand with Italy. You don't hear that. But with Israel, got to stand with Israel. You know? And so I began, that's probably the one thing that really started the journey.
Interesting.
What is this thing about our support for this particular country as opposed to any other? Why is it? And so then when I discovered, wait a minute, this is ultimately, it's a religious thing. We back them because our religions are meshed.
I see.
It's not for a geographical reason. It's not because of resources. It's not because of, you know, defenses or treaties it's religion. So then I asked, well, what happened? I mean, we're a superpower in the world. If you've got a superpower backing you, right? You have a pretty good chance of running the table. You can do what you want, right? Well, what's the end goal then? If we're backing them, what is the end goal? And so that led to a bunch of end times. What happens in the end? Well, you know, when Israel is completely Jewish and there are no more non-Jews there, and it's, you know, restored as 100% a Jewish state, then Jesus will come back. You know, there'll be Armageddon. There'll be essentially the end of the world, right? And I thought, I don't want that. I'm not eager for the end of this world. I want my grandkids to have grandkids. You know, and I hear people talking today about, oh, I just feel like Jesus is coming back any day, and oh, how great it'll be if he comes back in my lifetime. Really? You don't want your grandkids to experience a full life? You want an end to this place? I have a problem with that. I will do everything that I can to oppose that.
Okay.
To avoid Armageddon, to avoid the end of this world, to keep this thing going.
So
it's
that
a
was,
great place.
you were saying that those were two moments that were crucial that started the questioning journey about your worldview.
Yeah. Once I started exploring those, that's what led me to all of the debates.
Yeah.
And those were an eye opener too.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, it's a common phrase, the church is under attack, right? I didn't really have a good understanding of what that meant, what I thought that it meant when people said the church is under attack. It's not like I thought they were trying to storm the doors, of our local church. That's not what they meant. What I thought they meant was when you leave from here, you're going to see some things out in the world that you don't see around here. You're going to see some people using foul language. You will see some people exhibiting other poor behaviors, whether it be sexual or drug use or the music they listen to or any of these things. And so the things that we value, they don't value, and so therefore we consider that an attack on what we say are you should, like you said earlier, do these things and don't do these things. So when I heard as a young person the church is under attack, I thought that's what they meant, right? It wasn't until I began this process that I realized that's not at all what they meant. What they meant was, hey, there's a debate taking place this weekend down at Vanderbilt, and there's going to be some very articulate, very well-educated people that are going to be attacking this idea that there's a God, that's what we base our morality on. But they didn't tell me those things. They definitely didn't tell me it's going to be at this place at this time. You should go check it, because they don't want you exposed to that information. So they'll keep you away from that. They'll keep pumping you full of the information that they want you to have.
Yeah.
So, and that's what.
Let me ask you one more question, Chelsea, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
So you considered yourself a Christian?
Before,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's a question I actually don't think that I've ever asked you. And this is very telling for any person that goes on a journey to one place to another. They're not only two, there are many. Do you mourn it? Do you mourn? Because for me, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, if you mourn a worldview, this means that you were really inhabiting it. But if the journey was like very easy, that means that perhaps we were inhabiting on the fringes of the worldview itself. So what do you think? Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's some specific aspects of it that in deconstructing and letting it all go. Obviously, the community aspect is big. I miss the handshakes and the pat on the backs. How you doing, man? And I'll pray for you, and the sense of community that you get. That was one that's one thing. Also, there was times when I would pray. I would, in my mind back then, have conversations with God and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. This thing that I'm dealing with is really difficult. I would feel emotions that I felt like was a response. And so there was a soothing there, knowing that I was able to articulate these things to somebody that loved me and they cared about me and would always tell me the correct thing. There was a comfort in that relationship. And so once that went away, yeah, there are some there's some loneliness, because again, not only have you lost that,
I get it.
you've also lost this sense of community and these people that you can just gather with. So it all goes away at the same time. So I mourn those things.
Okay.
And I also there was some feelings of you know, everybody's out here doing what they think is right, but there's a certain confidence, but like, I am doing the right thing. Even if I don't like it sometimes, I'm still doing the right thing. You know, Chelsea talked about, I've got a work ethic. I've got this. I got, you know, there was some feeling that you got that you're doing the right things, and it's because you appreciate, you know, God and what he expects of me, and I'm doing those things. You know? There was some sense of that. And then to know that, to feel like I've been doing these things in reference to this higher power that now I don't believe in. That was an unusual, you know, that was an unusual thing.
Well, thank you, man, for sharing all that. So Chelsea, yeah, Christianity's core is based on the fact that we get to have a relationship with Jesus. That's for sure. And the cross and the resurrection. But Gary is, you know, positing very good questions about the world and the way it functions and all of that. Have you spent time digging into these questions? Like, for example, certain assumptions that we get to have about how the world is functioning because of what the Bible says and all of that, or this young earth creationism. When you hear those terms, is that something that you relate to, or is that a side of things that you don't like to interact with?
It's funny that you asked that question. Gary and I actually had this conversation within the last couple of days of, so yeah, I think about those things.
Okay.
I think about creation a lot. So, one thing that we haven't talked about yet is that, I work full time in a corporate, I work for a corporate, global medical device company, regulatory affairs, and I research laws and regulations and that sort of thing. That's one of my lives that I live. The other life that I live is I'm also a full-time student at the University of Tennessee. And my degree is, I'll graduate next May, but my degree is in plant sciences. It's a Bachelor of Science in Plant Sciences. And my concentration is sustainable landscape design. So I think about creation all the time. And I think about the origin, and I think about the creator, and I watch, I'll look at the intricacies of how plants grow and change, and you know, and instead of it producing, I mean, I have those questions, but it's each new thing that I learn along the journey. Like I was talking about earlier, there are things that are true that I haven't yet, my knowledge hasn't caught up yet. This is a great example because, like, where did the earth come from? You know, I believe in a creator. I believe in intelligent design, and I see it played out when I investigate, you know, the chemical makeup of plants, and when I watch the development of plants, and I learn about the biology of so yeah, I ask those big questions.
Okay.
But instead of them causing me to doubt, like in Gary's deconstruction process, they actually affirm, because I see more and more and more and more evidence of a creator. And to me, that's amazing. It's amazing that I get to see that. And it's inspiring for me as a creative to join with the creator in that process. Like it's almost a form of worship for me of like, man, how cool is it? So gardening to me is not just gardening. It's like I get to partner with the gardener, you know, the creator to in care of his creation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think about the big questions. It's not like I'm blinded to them at all. But yeah, I get to see them.
So let me ask you a more incisive question, if you don't mind, just to explore the way you think about things. So when you had this conversation with Gary and he says, you see this, it was a piece of what, granite?
Yeah, well, it wasn't granite. Because there wouldn't be fossils in it. Because it was igneous.
Okay.
So
what was it?
It was, well, it was actually material from tar pits.
Okay.
And these little organisms, well, I say little, some of them big as your arm, these organisms had gone into the tar pits.
Yes.
When we cut this material, it actually smells like somebody's tarring the roof. So
Okay.
a metamorphic rock.
Is that the way I should call it?
I think so.
Metamorphic?
Well, you can call it a marble.
A marble.
It's close
Let's
enough.
do it. So, Marble.
Yeah.
Great movies. That company makes amazing movies. No, so when Gary said to you, Chelsea, look at this. This is amazing. Like being in awe with a piece of marble and say millions of years. When he said that to you, is there room in your worldview to believe that God could have also created all of this through a process that took millions of years, or are you just, I don't know how to say it, like in your worldview there's no space for that? What do you think about that?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it.
Okay.
Yes, there's absolutely room.
Okay.
And it's funny, I haven't remembered that conversation until Gary just related. And so I think that's a great example of one of those things that I probably answered quickly. And it was before I started really the journey that I'm on now of like, actually there is a lot of room for that. There's actually, I'll use a scientific name because I think it's so cool and fun. But it's Metasequoia glyptostroboidus. And it's a scientific
That's
name.
the way I feel. That's the way I feel in the morning. Exactly.
So it's the scientific name of a specific plant. And the cool thing about this is it actually was fossilized. So that's the scientific name of a what's called a dawn redwood. So the redwood forest in California. A lot of those are metasequoias. Meta meaning huge, sequoia being big. And so the glyptostroboidus species of that taxonomy went extinct. And the only evidence that they had of it was a fossil of a leaf, they thought. And so that is, conceivably millions of years old, whoever. So fast forward, and they thought that there was no record that it was extinct. They ended up randomly, I don't remember the exact details of the story, but they found one. I think it's in China, if I remember correctly. So now they harvest the seeds from that one that's left, the original, and they have brought that. So everyone now that you see, we have several at UT in the gardens. There's several everywhere, and they all were propagated from seeds from that tree. And so when I started learning about that, and then the thought that God, He's God, He could create in any number of millions of years or millennia that He wanted to. So yes, there's room for that in my worldview, and in fact, I think it's even more of a kind of an attestation of how creative God is. One person that I know has a theory that God created the earth with a built-in history.
Oh yeah, that's the name. I don't remember.
And I think that and I had never heard of it until this friend of mine told me that. But that God built that created the earth with a built-in history, and then also we don't know how long God, before He started the actual what we know is the kind of creation of humans or whatever. But yes, I believe that the Lord, that it doesn't have to be literal days and that sort of thing. So there's room for that in my worldview.
So when I was struggling with some of these, when my cracks in my faith had started forming, and I was still trying to hang on to it, and the age of the earth was one of these big things. The way that I struggled to hang on for a while, right? I would say 6 months to a year. I really struggled to hang on. And it was, well, then what do you do with this? It was created in 6 days, and then something came from that. And I would tell myself and other people, I would say, well, the Bible also says that to God, 1 day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is 1 day. So this whole concept of days.
The dance. You were doing the dance yourself.
I was dancing. I was a great dancer, yes. And that I would justify it like that and say we can't really know what's meant by a day. It could mean epoch, it could be, huge spans of time. So I tried to hang on to my faith by saying that's a language thing.
Okay.
If you go back to the original Greek or Hebrew or then maybe we find that this meant in the first period of time He did this, and in the next period of time He did this, and then somewhere along the way we managed to translate it into, let's call it day. Okay, fine. And now people are saying, oh, it's day, 24 hours. And so I consider that a flaw. But that's how I tried to hang on for a while.
Interesting. Did you know that Chelsea had opened her mind about, or I don't know how to say it well, but there's room in her worldview for that piece of marble you had the conversation about to be as old as you say?
I began feeling like there was some room a few years ago.
Okay.
She didn't seem to be holding quite as tight to 6 literal days creation, only 6,000 years ago. She didn't seem to be holding quite as, strong onto that. We haven't really explored that topic. We did a little bit even last night. And but I've got a lot of good information that I'm going to send to her. And that conversation probably won't be far away. So
I still believe no matter if it was created, in 100 million years or however billion years, whatever, or 6 days or whatever, I still believe God did it. So there's that.
So and I can respect that. I said, look, we know all of these things. If you still want to say, God's doing it like that, fantastic. Fantastic. Because that's easier for me to understand than, hey, all of the evidence shows us these long time frames and all the evidence shows us these things. And then when somebody says, right, but he just created it like that so that you might think that, or I've even heard some people say, well, the devil put the fossils in the ground to throw you off of.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that.
Right.
I've heard that.
Wow.
Yeah. People get crazy with this stuff. Yeah.
That makes no sense.
I don't want to be a horrible moderator and just give my opinions or anything, but
You've heard that.
there's I'll do it. I'm a horrible moderator.
Do it.
There's this. I think it's Albert Camus, one of the existentialists. I think it's him or Heidegger. I think one of them distinguishes two things. He was an atheist, by the way. Respects him so much. He said we can commit physical suicide, which he didn't want to. No one should do that. And then he said, but we could commit philosophical suicide. And with this, he means, in order to believe something that you think is true, you need to put into question things that are actually true, but you obviate them so that you can stay with what you think is true. That is what he called philosophical suicide. And by the way, some people might be watching this and you go, oh, Pedro, but you're a Christian. You are committing that because you believe in Jesus, whatever. I get it. But when I hear stuff like that, I was very reticent because I said, so I'm becoming a follower of Jesus and now I need to deny with the world, that I need to deny actual evidence that it's a good thing. It's still very strange for me.
Right.
All of that is just very strange to me. I do respect because the core basis of our faith is having a relationship with Jesus and actually seeing it, like not learning the Bible, but actually obey it, which means the fruits of the Spirit. That is the actual thing. But again, has been a struggle for me because if I had become a Christian and had moved to, I don't know, Switzerland, movements like young earth creationism and people doubting vaccines and all that is just not a thing. Because for example, the Catholic Church is incredibly open when it comes to the scientific method and all that. Of course, there might, I don't know, but so that was strange in my journey too. So okay,
there also has to be, I was going to add one thing. I think there also has to be an element of mystery to God.
Yeah.
If
Would you say there has to be an element of mystery to God?
Yeah, I think so. And what I mean by that is, if I can understand everything about him, then he's no longer God. He's just my whatever box I've put him in, right? So in that aspect related to young Earth, or not, that's what I mean when I say I don't know if it took him 100 billion years or if it took him 6 days. I still believe that God did it. However he the mechanics of how he did it, I may not know this side of heaven. I don't know. And I'm okay with that mystery. there are other things that I may not be okay with mystery. Nothing comes to mind right now, but there's elements of that I'm really not okay with mystery, or that I struggle because I want to know, and I want to know right now.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
But actually, I was reading this other book this morning, and the quote that I'm sitting with, even in the last, I don't know, 6 hours or so, 10 hours, is that there is no art if you don't let the paint dry. And it's about creation. And the point of the quote was it's written by a Christian artist, but he's talking about you've got to learn the element of patience. And the questions, the mystery requires patience, I think, in the pursuit of, okay, God, I don't understand this. I'm willing to wrestle in it with you. I don't understand it. Help me understand. And then that's how you learn in the process. But sometimes that process takes years. Sometimes it takes decades. I don't know.
So how do you feel? Oh, go.
So speaking of that, because you've still got other questions, right?
Oh yeah, no, but please,
Good,
if you guys want to talk and I listen, that would be great.
Well,
I don't have to be the one.
Chelsea won't be here a lot. You and I are going to be here all the time.
Yes.
We're going to have a lot of different conversations.
Correct.
All that kind of stuff. But, so there's been certain things that I've learned from Chelsea over the years, and I really value about her, that I want everybody to be able to get her version of and allow. I want you to unpack them and tell people about these different things, right? You've mentioned journaling a couple of times. I know that's been an important thing for you over the years, and I've told Pedro a little bit about it. But
Yeah.
what has that done for you? And
Yeah. It's a huge part of my life. I would say I don't necessarily journal every day, but most days I journal a lot. The best days, we were talking earlier before we got started about, like, today's been the best day for you.
Oh yeah.
One thing, if somebody were to describe my perfect day, it would begin with a solid chunk of time of just journaling. And for me, I would say my journaling is just an ongoing conversation with Jesus. Some would call it a prayer journal, but it's not one-sided, if that makes sense. I would describe it more of, did you ever as a kid use one of those grid things to like sort sand and rocks? The little thing, you jiggle it back and forth, and then the big rock stay up.
Yeah.
I would equate it to that, kind of sifting my thoughts through, like, in front of Jesus and going, okay, Lord, these are all, like, I just word vomit in my journal, like, this is where I'm at. And the image I get in my mind is like, Lord, I need to just dump it all out at your feet and sift it through, and whatever rises to the top, that'll be what we talk about. Like, if there's certain things that my mind just rests on, and then I can't get rid of them. And normally I'll have some section of scripture with me, and so I'll take that section of scripture and sift whatever my emotions and my thoughts are through that section of scripture, and there's application there. Right now I'm sitting through Psalm 119, taking it section by section. There's 22 sections of 8 verses apiece, and I'm just methodically walking through it, but at the same time using this practice of, this is what's happening. And that section of Psalm 119, does that connect? Does it not connect? I don't want to create something that's not there. That's emotion. That's not God at all. And so it's just a lot of me in allowing God to sift my thoughts and then bring to light whatever He chooses to bring to light.
And this is not something that she just, last week she thought she would take a few days or whatever. When you go to her house, we've got some bookshelves back here behind us. She literally has shelves full, and she's got a lot of books, but there's a couple of shelves there that I'm like, hey, I don't see titles on these, but what are all these books right here? She's like, oh, that's my journals. And I'm like, so she's got book after book after that. She has literally handwritten all of these conversations day after day after day. I mean, some of them are 10, 15, I don't know how long you've been doing it, but
I don't know, as long as I can remember.
So that are her conversations with God 20 years ago, and she can go to them and open them. I don't pry because it's your personal relationship.
Your kids know about this, right?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
my daughter actually told me a few years ago. She said, "Mom, when you die, I want your journals."
Yeah,
and I said,
I was
okay.
going to ask you about that.
And so it's written into our will that she gets my journals.
Wow.
When I die. So yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
No,
unfortunately, and I've told her this. I'm like, you're welcome to read them anytime you want to. Unfortunately, you may think your mom's nutso because, and both of you guys know how this is. Like you sometimes when you get really stressed out or something's really weighing on you, you tend to loop, know. And so there are certain areas of that where I get in loops because I'm really burdened by something, a situation or a friendship or a relationship or whatever. And so there's these recurring themes of like, I am struggling and I can't get out of it or whatever. And so, yeah. So she may think I'm crazy. I don't know, but she wanted him.
It's amazing that you're so intentional about it. But that's kind of how you are. So
yeah, if I don't get the words out through the end of my pen, then they circle in my head, and I can't get them out. And it's a release for me too, to just get them out on paper, and I'll worry about it later. And I find that when I'm working on a project for work or if I'm working on a school thing, I'm the same way. I get all the words out and then I edit down, So it's a method.
Gary, I have a question for you.
okay.
And Chelsea was talking about mystery.
Okay.
So, and you, Chelsea, I don't want to put words in your mouth that you didn't say, okay? But she has all these experiences, nature, order, and all of that. Then she says there are things she doesn't understand. And then she sees a mystery and she embraces it. She puts that mystery at the feet of God. And she's comfortably inhabiting in this I know but I don't type of world. Now in your journey, now that you are where you are, when you have moments of awe, surely you are so curious and inquisitive, and you get so excited when you talk about things that you love. From your perspective, when you have those moments of awe, like, wow, what is this? Like, what? This is just... What do? Do you talk to yourself? Do you... there's an expression of awe that humanity, we all have. So how does that process feel for you now?
Well, I do draw a distinction between awe and mystery. Those are,
Yeah.
Because I've seen some
Definitely.
incredibly beautiful places, and that kind of. That I'm like, wow, that is amazing, right? But that's different than how did that happen?
Oh, okay.
How does that get
yeah.
to be that?
Yeah.
And I don't like a mystery. I've even told my guys before, going out and installing a job, they come back and, that they happen to break a piece, and I say, okay, well, okay, fine, it happens. But how did it happen? I don't know, man. We were doing everything right, and it just fell apart. Okay, great. Now we've got a mystery. We can't have a mystery, because what are you going to do when you go right back out there tomorrow with a new piece? Are you going to break it also? You have to figure out what we did wrong. Were you carrying it and you wrapped it around a corner? Did somebody slam it down? We have to figure out, it can't just be a mystery. It cannot be a straight mystery, So I'm very opposed to those things. But that doesn't mean that I'm not, that I don't find beauty in landscape, literature, music. Music can bring me to tears. A beautiful landscape can have me just mystified. Just, wow, look at that. That is amazing. So I'm in awe regularly of a variety of different amazing things, but I don't like a mystery.
Yeah. So let me ask you, let's go to the deep waters.
Okay.
That you go to with Chelsea.
All right. I love it.
No, one question. So, the type of mystery that it was actually the one that took me from probably one of the reasons why I went from atheism to Jesus. This is one of because there's a point when you're trying to explain everything, and when you explained everything, then I realized, oh wow, now I lack an explanation for the reason why all of this is the way it is. So now, when it comes to that mystery, would you say, which is, by the way, a very respectable thing to say, when it comes to why is there something rather than nothing, those big questions, you would say, I don't know. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. So, for instance, okay, so Gary, you think the universe has been around for a billions of years. The Earth has been around for, not as many billions, but, several billion years. Yeah. Okay, well, what was before that? What was before the beginning of the universe? I don't know that.
Okay.
That is a mystery.
Okay.
Gary, you said you're not okay with mysteries. I'm not. That's the reason there's entire fields of study. There's
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
thousands and thousands of people actively working on these things, and our knowledge about a wide variety of things is increasing all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and whether someone is a believer or not a believer, you know, they can all answer the same questions
Yeah.
up until a certain point, in which they both have to say, "I don't know." And that's really the end of it, and it doesn't add anything to the conversation if one of them goes, when we get to that spot of we know this and we know this and we know this and everybody knows this, and then when you get to that spot of I don't know, that they go, well, God did a thing. You haven't added anything to the equation, because now I can't prove that either. You just added another, we don't know that. And so I'll take knowledge as far up that ladder as it can go, but when we reach the point where we both don't really know, then that's where I say, oh, I don't know is an answer. I don't feel the need to fill it in with God or anything else.
So Chelsea, when it comes to knowledge, again, you correct me if I'm saying something that you're not saying, okay?
Okay.
Chelsea, when it comes to knowledge and knowing things and this and that, and this works like this is a cause and effects of relationship, and we know this and this and that. Your relationship with Jesus, what type of questions does your relationship with Jesus answer that science cannot answer from your perspective?
That science cannot answer.
Yeah.
I think for me, it is a lot of the why behind, and it's interesting, like to hear Gary explain kind of his journey in learning. I'm a lifelong learner. Obviously, I went back to college at 50. So, and everything that I discover produces awe in me. I'm like, man, and I find myself multiple times a week going, man, God is so cool. He created that like that. Every time I discover, some other thing. And so I think for me, like I said earlier, it gives more clarity around that design, that, it produces some questions sometimes of like, well, wait a minute, Lord, if you were so orderly about this thing in my life that's disorderly, this relationship that seems like it's not working out the way that I want it to, this that I desperately want to reconcile or whatever, that's not working out. Why? And so then I ask, Lord, I know you can, and you choose not to. So that's hard for me, But then there are some even human relationships where I know you can, but you choose not. Like with another human that I know they could, but they don't, and that's hard for me to reconcile. And so it produces questions for me in some aspects in terms of how things work, but then more than that, it answers questions for me on how things work. And I routinely use the scientific method just in my field of study. And every time the scientific method, we use the term scientific discovery. Everybody's heard that. It's literally that for me. It's that God created it and we just discovered it. We didn't create anything by using our scientific method. We just discovered another thing, yet another thing, yet another thing. And in my opinion, it's yet another thing about him as the creator. And so that produces awe in me.
So I want to ask you a question about that, Gary. So as an anti-theist or atheist or non-believer, from your perspective, and in this we all agree, we are discovering things, and so does that suggest something to you in your worldview? Is there something to say about that?
Well,
is there awe? Is there mystery? Is there anything else in that process, or just what it is?
Yeah, I don't doubt or disagree at all that we're discovering things, that we're figuring things out. But the same as I can't attribute them all to Pedro or, it's the attributing these discoveries, assigning agency to that. And honestly, it takes me back to when we didn't understand why lightning was coming out of the sky. People would assign agency to it. Well, obviously, and next thing you know, we have Zeus. When they don't understand another thing, they'll they'll assign agency to it, and now we've got another God, and Hitchens used to say that during those times there was polytheism. People believed in many gods. And then later on got it down to monotheism. At least we're believing in one God, which he said I see as progress because we're getting near the truer figure all the time. So I just don't. I agree that we're discovering things. I just don't agree on attributing them to a Zeus or an Apollo or a Thor or any other god.
If you could, for us, to put aside the idea of God.
Oh, okay.
What does that say about reality itself for you? When the fact that we live in a place where things can be discovered and we have awe and all that. Forget about God and all that. For you, as a non-believer, atheist, secular, what does that say about the world? What could you tell us besides the agency, God? What does that say about the universe?
That we're in this reality where we can discover?
Yeah,
things?
I mean, I know that this can be answered in many ways. I'm not pushing you to ask you in a certain way, and I'm not trying to challenge you. I'm really trying to explore what, for a person that doesn't forget about God, agency, and anything. So
to me, it's exactly as it should. It's exactly as it should be.
Okay.
Remember, I think that the world is the universe is many billions of years old. The Earth is several billions of years old, right? And we, as a species, just showed up. I've heard it said if you broke down the time frame since the beginning of the universe until right now, if you laid all that out on, say, a 24-hour clock, right?
Oh yeah, I heard this. It's fascinating.
Say, okay, well the Earth only came into existence in the last 3 or 4 hours. And then with all that time, and then we only showed up like in the last second or two of the day. We just got here.
So what does this cause? What is it? I want to explore the feeling. Amazement.
Amazement.
Yeah.
A sense of smallness, because you have all of this huge amounts of time, and like I said, when I say us as a species, we just got here, but the party's been going on all this time, all these developments. There's a feeling of insignificance, and we're just now figuring out our way around this place. Even just a couple hundred years ago, we knew very little, about germs, about, we haven't even been flying, in airplanes, 150 years, maybe, since the Wright brothers. We're just now figuring out how to navigate this place. So that's my feeling of we're still brand new here. We still got a lot to discover. So
Interesting.
The work is far from finished.
Yeah.
So, and hence the reason why I don't want the end of this place. We just showed up, and now we're eagerly awaiting the destruction of it for a better place. That's that's opposite of the way I think.
So talking about endings, we have some time. I want to get into more, keep asking questions like this.
Yeah.
There's a particular topic that every time that it comes up, I would say it brings the best out of people. And in my experience, this is when we talk about death. It really does. It's really vulnerable. And not only because beyond the way we feel about this, it's because we have experienced it around us and what causes and all that. So I wanted to ask you from your both perspective and see, because that is a thing that supposedly we're going to experience.
Oh yeah.
And we have experienced around us and all that. So Chelsea, tell us about the way you experience death. All, of course, depending on your relationship with Jesus. Are you afraid of your physical death? How do you experience that side of reality?
That's a good question. I'm not afraid of death,
Okay.
No, I'm not afraid of death. I do. So I don't know if Gary's told you this or not, but
I already know what you're going to say. If you didn't say it, I was going to, because it's amazing.
so I changed a lot about my dietary lifestyle and a lot of other things I think about my lifestyle about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I have the express goal. My husband knows this. Everybody knows about. I want to live to at least 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
I'm 52 right now. So I have almost 50 years left if I only live to 100. So I'm not afraid of death, but there's so much life that I want to continue to live. And I want to age well. I feel strongly about this planet that we live on. So it's interesting. There are a lot of people, I've heard it too, that say, I hope Jesus comes back in my lifetime. I spend every day with Jesus. Am I anxious to see him face to face? 100%. I think that's goes without saying for me. But he placed me here in this period of time, in this country, and not another country and not another period of time for a purpose. And I still feel like that's true. And there's so much more life I want to live. And so I'm not afraid of dying. I don't want to stop living. And I see so many Christians doing that. And I heard somebody say it a long time ago, they're so heavenly minded, they're of no earthly good. And I feel like there's a lot of people, there's a lot of Christians that kind of fall into that trap and disconnect.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that. I want to live and I want to be present here. And when Jesus decides that, he's done with me here and he's ready for me to end this life on earth, then that's fine. But I'm not afraid of it. I'm not in a rush to get there either.
It's an interesting topic. We have never talked about that. Like this theology of heaven, where many people are really focused on just leaving earth and being in heaven, while I would say humbly, the whole message is you guys are here on earth. You are the stewards of earth. You need to take care of earth. You need to celebrate and be creative with this. So not hate it, but, it's just very interesting. So one more question. What do you expect to see on the other side?
I expect to see the face of a friend. I expect to see the face of Jesus who loves me, who knows me well. And I expect more of a sense of, you're finally here. I'm so glad to see you. That's what I expect. That the veil is torn at that point. It's kind of like you've talked to a friend on the phone.
Yeah.
But you haven't seen each other in a long time or seen each other, never met face to face.
Yeah.
I have people. This is an interesting dynamic of the world that we're in right now. A lot of us work remotely. I work remotely. I have people at work that I know really, really well that I've never been in the same room with because of the nature of our work. Some of them are in different countries. We've never even been in the same country together. And so it's not exactly the same feeling, obviously, because it's Jesus and, not a coworker. But I sometimes when we do, in the random occasion, especially after COVID, when we finally got to meet in the same room, we would meet each other. And the comments were always like, you're a lot taller than I thought, or you're a lot shorter than I thought, or, oh my, because you only see each other on a screen. Yeah. And so I envision a little bit of that, of like, instant recognition because we know each other so well, but then also a bit of mystery of like, that's not what I expected. And how cool is that? So.
Interesting. Yes. What about you, Gary? When you think about death, when you think about the end of your life and all those feelings and experiencing death of people that you love around you, how do you deal with that with your worldview?
Well, as far as my own life is concerned, I'm not afraid of being gone, right? I've often told people after I'm gone, it's going to bother me pretty much exactly the same in the ways it did for the 1,000 years before I got here. Not at all. I was completely unaware that I wasn't here. And after I'm gone, I won't be aware that I'm gone either. I'm not looking forward to the process of dying. I don't think anyone is. I don't think anybody wants to be incapacitated or imbecilic or notice the deterioration in themselves.
Imbecilic? What's the meaning of that word?
It means when you've lost your senses, when you're.
Oh, does it come from imbecile? Mm-hmm. I've never heard that one.
Yeah, no one wants to be,
Oh, wow.
in need of care. Not.
Yeah. Okay.
The final days. Those are. No one's looking forward to those.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I have some trepidation. Obviously, there. But as far as no one wants to think about the fact that the party is going to go on after they are gone, but it will. I don't anticipate any sort of an afterlife, so I don't have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
But what that does for the way that I see the world is that I don't consider this world. You've heard me say it before. I don't consider this place to be the green room, waiting to get on to the big show.
This is the big show.
This is the big show. This is the important time. So it makes this time that much more valuable. If you're gonna tell somebody that you care about them, tell them. You need to tell them now. If you're gonna spend those time, if you're gonna have those conversations, you need to do it now. So it makes this time just so much more valuable because this is my one shot. This is the one life that I get. I don't get another one later on. There's no redo. And there's no, for me and my worldview, there's no eternity. This is the life that you get. So do your best for other people, for the relationships, for the experiences that you have, So, and as my body wears down, I'm like, man, I really wish I had done this or that before now. And I'm like, I think it might be too late now.
Yeah.
I can't do that now.
Yeah.
So I feel the clock ticking, so to speak. And when I cross the finish line, I don't anticipate a party or anything. And so it brings a somberness or a I don't know. It definitely. But when you don't think that there's anything after this life, it changes your thoughts on this life. So you want to explore, you want to learn, you want to have relationships, you want to do all of the things because you're not going to get time later on. So
Interesting. Okay, so let's do 2 more questions. Okay. 2 more.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chelsea, I'm gonna ask him the same question as well. Okay. So this is more maybe clashing of ideas a little bit, but maybe
Okay.
maybe more.
Well,
I don't know. Invitation.
So I appreciate Chelsea so much coming and exploring, because this has pretty much been my journey, and so I appreciated her coming in town and spending some time. Now she spent a few days bouncing around. She's been to our event. She came to a dinner last night with a mixed group of believers and non, and now she's here for this conversation. But I did call her last week, and I said, I want you to know that you're not coming in town and we're not doing this conversation so there can be like the final showdown.
Yeah, no.
Nothing.
No. And the question, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way, but it's more like, till now, I feel that there's a world here, there's another world here,
Okay.
and we have been doing this,
Okay.
but in these moments, maybe they're going to get...
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, Chelsea, if you could say, I'm going to ask you the same question about her.
Okay.
Chelsea, if you could encourage Gary to rethink something about their worldview in order to see Christianity in a new light, what would you say to him?
That's a great question. I think, and he and I have had this conversation, a little bit about this conversation. I think in each of our deconstruction processes that one of the things that I would encourage him is to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, to maybe encourage some of that, hard questions about, hold on, what am I piling on to? Is my issue with religion, or do I not believe in religion, or do I not believe in God? And maybe that's part of the deconstruction process. But I would encourage really more kind of a hard look of like, what if it really is God? What if God, the mystery, really is God. And the more you're discovering, the more you're wrestling, the more you're actually discovering more of the mystery that's Him. What if He's inviting you into that mystery and into that journey? And it doesn't have to be, you can let go of all of the religion, acknowledge that, yeah, it's crap and you got to throw it out. It should be. He feels the same way. But what if it's really God that's inviting you into that mystery?
Interesting. Gary, if you could encourage Chelsea to rethink about her worldview, to make her see that it's not true. Is that fair that I put it that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say to her?
Well, very much the same answer.
Okay.
She wants me to, and it's similar to a question that you asked the other day in terms of could it be this, and what she's saying is the same thing. As much as you learn about the age of the earth and all these scientific discoveries, don't leave out the fact that it could be God. Fine. Okay, I understand that, and that's like I said, like you were asking me the other day. My answer to the question is very much the same, but in the opposite direction. If you have this relationship with this all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving, right? What's it going to harm to ask? Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to get to know the opposite side's opinion as well as they do. Why don't people believe in this? Why don't people believe in my God? What evidence do I really have? How do I know what I know? If He is who He says He is, what harm would there be in the questions? It's not like He wouldn't want you to know the answers. It's not like He wouldn't want you to be able to defend when you're asked a question. Why do these people think that the earth is this old? And there's this book here that says these days. Dive into that. Find out everything you can about what the science tells us, and then how those scriptures came to be. So don't be afraid of the skepticism. Don't shun the questions. A lot of Christians get very uncomfortable when you start asking them because they feel an attack, as though they have to defend this all-powerful. He doesn't need defending.
That's a good point.
That's true. That's very valid.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I had a friend just the other day.
That's a very good point.
Called his girlfriend and said, "Hey, I just got pulled over," and she said, "Okay, I'll see you when you get here." Right? And for some reason, he was offended by that. Right? And I thought, how odd is that? Like, you're okay. You're not doing anything wrong. You're capable of taking care of like, if I called Patricia and said, "Hey, I got pulled over, I'm going to be late," she said, "Okay, I'll see you when you get here." That means that she has a lot of confidence that I'm going to be able to handle the situation. She's not worried about me.
Yeah.
Why would I want her to worry? I don't need the worrying. I can handle it, right? He can handle it. Entertain all of the questions, listen to all of the arguments against this thing that you hold so dear.
Interesting.
Because he doesn't need defending.
Yeah.
He's fully capable.
Okay, good.
So,
okay, well, thank you. I've been thinking about this question a lot because this one, I hope it's okay that I ask it. This one is pretty.
I think we're okay.
You guys are okay?
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Okay, so Chelsea, here goes.
Okay.
What is the most embarrassing moment that you can share about Gary when he was a kid? I'll ask you the same about her.
Most embarrassing moment. Oh,
Like
gosh.
something that Gary did that it would be funny to know about him.
So this is actually, well, I'm going to turn your question around.
Okay, you can do that.
Yeah. I don't answer questions like that about my husband either. So
Oh, okay. Something funny.
Yeah,
something
it's an
good
honor
funny.
thing. But here's a great thing that both illustrates. It's funny about me, but also his character.
I think I know what story
You know
you're gonna
exactly what story I'm going to tell. So, and to be fair, I'm not as good of a storyteller, but let me tell the story and then you can fill in the blanks.
Okay.
So we lived in this house, and it had these tall windows, like on either side of the fireplace, right? She knows the story too. So here I am, the big sister. I'm in the house. I've locked my little brother out, as one does when you're latchkey kids in the 80s. Yeah. And so he is banging on the door. Let me in, let me in, let me in. And so, and I've got the blinds like up with these Roman shade things, and I've got him up, and I'm looking at him through the window, face to face, watching him, and laughing at him, whatever. And he's like, "Let me in," and he's crying and whatever. And so
but these were also safety.
They were
windows.
safety windows,
so they have a slight curve towards the outside, so that limbs and rocks don't break the glass.
Yeah.
So I'm on the outside. I'm hammering.
Hang on, I'm gonna tell a story.
Okay, go ahead. I didn't know if Pedro knew what safety glass was.
Yeah. So he's like wailing on this window. So in mocking of him, I hit the window and I'm going to wail on it too. Well, it'll break the other way. And my fist went straight through it. And now there's a hole this big.
Very large.
Window.
And all the glass went right.
And all the glass.
Because she went, oh yeah, is that funny?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And
yes.
all the glass.
Yes. So he shocks and takes off running down the street. So my mom comes home from work.
Where did you go?
Yeah. Oh, I don't even remember when he came back. But so at some time later, mom comes home from work, and of course the Roman shade. Do you know what a Roman shade is? So it's like a tapestry thing.
Yeah.
And so when you lower it, like it completely covers the window. You can't see through it.
Oh, okay.
So it's like this tapestry thing.
Okay.
And it's like covering the window.
Okay.
Except it's cold outside. And so now the room is colder than it should be. And so she goes investigating and raises the shade and sees what in the world has happened. So she calls us both in there. He took 100% of the blame.
Gary?
Yes. When my dad came home from work, we were raised in a home where we were not beaten as children or anything like that, but my parents did spank us. He took the spanking, and my mom did not find out that I was actually the one that broke it, and he took the blame until 20 years later.
Oh my gosh.
Like until we were
gosh,
adults.
man.
He wore that the whole time.
Why did you do that? Do you remember the
Because
reasoning
whenever
behind?
she got spanked, she would scream bloody murder. I promise, it was just like it was terrible. And
That is so sweet.
I could not sit in one room and hear her from the other room. And so I did it. I'll take it, And so
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
and then we were telling the story as adults with my folks around, and I don't know how somehow it came up. And I said, "Mom, I think enough time has passed now. You should know your daughter broke that window."
Oh, wow.
No. I said, no. Your daughter broke that in my face, right at me. Like, yeah, she did that. And I took it. So anyway.
Oh, that is a cool story.
So he's an incredible guy.
That's cool.
But, yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
What about Chelsea? Something funny you can tell us about her.
Okay,
Or
so
fun or whatever you want to.
So it was the day before prom, or some big day. I think it was prom, right?
Oh, New Year's Eve. It was New Year's Eve.
Oh, was it?
Oh, yeah. We were already married. It was New Year's Eve.
Really? In the
yeah.
pool?
Oh, no. When it got injured?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell the Star Crunch story. No.
Oh no. Anyway, so
This is when I was 12, yeah. So.
we're having a pool party, right? And best I can remember, I mean, this is 40 years ago. So anyway, thereabouts. We're having a pool party, and she's got some big event like the next day. I forget if it was a high school dance or a prom. It's something big the next day, right? And we're out there swimming, and we've got a bunch of friends over, backyard full of people, And Chelsea and a friend are racing in the pool, swimming, and they're doing butterfly strokes, right? And so you swim this way, as you're swimming down the pool. Mm-hmm. Well, Chelsea's got her eyes closed, right? And doesn't realize she's quickly approaching the edge of the pool. And so she comes up and goes like that, and right then catches the edge of the pool.
Are you serious
and,
with your mouth?
and breaks half of her front tooth, off. and of course comes up out of the water, "Ah," and half of her front tooth is just gone, and we have this event tomorrow night that she's, anyway. So luckily my mom was in the medical field, and we had a dentist that we had gone to for years and years, and she called him and said, "We've got an emergency. We have to take care of this tonight." And he said, "Okay, meet me at the office." And so we went down to the dentist after hours, and I'm not sure I don't know if he glued the piece back on or he
No, he
fastened,
didn't. He put a crown on it.
Put a crown on it, and so fixed her tooth up well enough to get through the next day. And, but yeah, broke half of her front tooth off.
Just the feeling of it. I can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Man.
fast forward now, that happened when I was 12, so 40 years later, I've had multiple procedures, multiple sets of braces, there's probably $80,000 in this front 14.
Wow.
Did it all come from that incident, or you just, you just
Seriously, from that incident?
From that incident, yeah. It was caused so much trauma that, yeah. So the funny thing is they don't do paper charts anymore, but my medical chart, if they did paper charts, so it would be super thin. But my dental chart is very thick. Yeah, I'm very, very picky about dentists now because somebody's got to be able to fix all this. And then as I age, we have different conversations. So yeah, it's a big deal.
Just the feeling. I'm
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
man.
All right, so look, one last
Okay.
thing. This is
Yeah,
where,
please.
This is where we'll end, right? I've been going through this last little chapter, right? You taught me something years ago that I think is good for everybody to understand, but you can kind of unpack it a little bit. Seasons. Because this has been a season for me, and the way that you explained it one time, and the way that you made comparisons and that kind of, so if somebody says, "Chelsea, I heard something about seasons the other day. What's that about?" What do you tell them?
So I feel like we go through seasons in life, just like nature goes through seasons. So a lot of times we get, I hear Christians talk about a calling on their life, like for a long, long time, or I hear people talk about lifelong friends, and sometimes those things are true, that you have a certain calling on your life and it really is for your full life. But I believe that we have seasons of life where we are intended to do, or we get to do things for a certain season, and those seasons end and a new season begins. And instead of fighting it, I think it's good for us to question, am I entering into a new season? Maybe. Is this season maybe coming to an end? And what's been good? What's been, sometimes they're really defined. Like for me, I know I'm going to graduate in May. And so like that season's going to end. And how can I make the most of it until then? And sometimes those seasons change, and our seasons change in a phone call. Like there's an unexpected thing, and all of a sudden it kicks off some new season. You had no idea. The season that I'm in with school actually started with a phone call. I had no idea that I was going to even be starting on. So, so whatever it is, that concept is really important. It causes me to not hold on too tight and embrace the change. So many people resist change, but change is good and healthy, and and so the concept of seasons helps me live fully in the moment, be present, but also be okay if that season changes, and maybe a friendship moves on, and that's okay. It wasn't meant forever, and whatever. So, so yeah, it's a concept that's been really
and not
good for me.
everybody experiences the same seasons.
Yeah,
Like I have a friend that has experienced the loss of a child, right? Her son at 20 years old was taken suddenly, prime of his life. That's something that I haven't experienced, but she has gone through that season. Not everybody has experienced deconstructing their religion and something that they held, fairly firmly, for a long period of time, and kind of built their brand around, their character around, and then to have to change all that and find new, so not everybody experiences the same seasons. And when if we haven't connected for a while, it's not unusual for us to ask each other, "Hey, so what kind of season are you in right now?" And it's just an opening question to what's going on with you. What do what's good, what's bad, what's challenging, what's thrilling, whatever. So in this latest season, for me, thank you very much for coming and spending some time and exploring this season that I've been in. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah. Well, I love you very much, and I'm glad to be here. Glad to be part of it.
And thank you, by the way, for allowing me to be part of this sacred story that you guys are building. It's pretty cool. Patricia, thank you so much for helping us too.
Thank
And
you.
I
Thank
hope
you.
anyone that listens to this conversation in the future, they feel encouraged to do the same with their siblings and
Yeah.
friends and family members.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Pedro.
guys.